Tammy Wynette was one of country music's most iconic voices, a legend whose heartfelt songs about love, loss, and perseverance resonated with millions. From humble beginnings, she rose to fame with hits like Stand By Your Man and Divorce, defining an era of country music. But behind the success was a life filled with personal struggles, health battles, and heartbreak. Despite her resilience, her story came to a tragic and untimely end, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire. This is the life and heartbreaking ending of Tammy Wynette. Tammy Wynette was born Virginia Pugh on May 5, 1942, in rural Mississippi. Her father, an aspiring musician, had been diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor before she was even born. Knowing he would not live to see her grow up, he introduced his infant daughter to the piano, hoping that music would become part of her life. Tragically, Wynette's father passed away when she was just 9 months old. His death left her mother struggling to provide, forcing her to leave home in search of work. As a result, Tammy spent most of her childhood on her grandparents' Mississippi farm, raised by them while her mother worked elsewhere. Growing up in rural Mississippi, Wynette learned the meaning of hard work early on. She spent long hours laboring on the family farm, helping to keep food on the table. But despite the challenges of farm life, she developed a strong connection with her grandparents and found comfort in their small country church, where music and faith became guiding forces in her life. As a teenager, Wynette was popular at school, but she also developed a rebellious streak. She smoked cigarettes, flirted with boys, and tested the boundaries of her strict upbringing. Her mother strongly disapproved of her early interest in dating, which led to frequent arguments between them. During high school, Wynette fell in love with Billy Cole, a young man from her church. The two planned to marry, but because Wynette was underage, she needed her mother's permission. Determined to keep their romance a secret, she tried having wedding rings sent to her school address. But her mother discovered the plan before they could go through with it. When Wynette's mother discovered her plan to marry Billy Cole, she forbade it outright, refusing to allow her young daughter to wed so soon. Heartbroken, Wynette ended the relationship, but instead of becoming more obedient, she grew even more determined to make her own choices. It wasn't long before another man caught her attention in an even bigger way. At just 17 years old, Wynette fell deeply for Bird, a local man with little job stability. Once again, her mother refused to approve the marriage, believing that Bird couldn't provide the future her daughter deserved. But Wynette was determined if her mother wouldn't sign the marriage papers, she would find someone who would. Eventually, she turned to her grandfather, who reluctantly agreed to give his permission. With the necessary paperwork in hand, Wynette and Bird officially became husband and wife. But their marriage came at a cost. It severed her already strained relationship with her mother, forcing Wynette to leave home and start a new life with her husband. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for reality to set in. The young couple lived in extreme poverty, settling in a small shack on her grandfather's property. The home had no electricity, no running water, and no heat, making life especially difficult. Despite the harsh conditions, Wynette tried to stay hopeful, believing they could build a better future together. But as time passed, Bird's chronic unemployment became impossible to ignore, and Wynette began to feel the weight of their struggles. As Bird moved from job to job, Wynette followed him, relocating between Alabama and Tennessee in search of stability. To help make ends meet, she took whatever job she could find, working as a barmaid, attending beauty school, and juggling multiple responsibilities while raising her first 2 children. It was a difficult and exhausting life, but through it all, an unexpected opportunity was about to change everything. While working as a barmaid, Wynette occasionally entertained customers by singing. Her impromptu performances caught the attention of both the bar owner and the house pianist, who immediately recognized her remarkable voice. They encouraged her to pursue a career in music, planting the idea that maybe her future wasn't in small-town life, but in Nashville. Meanwhile, her personal life was falling apart. Her marriage to Upal Bird had become toxic as he drifted in and out of her life unpredictably. The constant stress and instability took a toll, and Wynette suffered a mental breakdown. Concerned for her well-being, a family member admitted her to a psychiatric hospital where she was diagnosed with depression. At the time, electroshock therapy was a common treatment, and Wynette underwent the controversial procedure. When she left the hospital, she knew it was time for change. She told Bird she wanted a divorce, determined to break free from their failing marriage. But just as she was ready to start fresh, she discovered she was pregnant with her third child. Still, she refused to let this setback stop her. She made the difficult but necessary choice to leave Bird for good and raise her children on her own. Seeking a new beginning, Wynette moved to Birmingham, Alabama, where she worked in a beauty salon to support her 3 daughters. She took on any job she could find, doing whatever it took to keep food on the table. But deep down, she knew this wasn't the life she was meant to live. Her dreams were pulling her toward something bigger. In 1966, Wynette made the boldest move of her life. Believing her voice could be her escape from poverty, she packed up her daughters and drove to Nashville, settling into the Anchor Motel. With nothing but determination, she began visiting record labels, knocking on doors, and hoping that someone would give a single mother from Mississippi a chance. Breaking into Nashville's music industry was no easy feat, and Tammy Wynette quickly learned how unforgiving it could be. Despite her determination and undeniable talent, her early attempts to land a record deal were met with rejection. Executives dismissed her as too traditional or unpolished, believing she lacked the commercial appeal of other rising stars. But Wynette refused to give up. Her persistence eventually led her to a life-changing meeting with legendary producer Billy Sherrill. Sherrill immediately recognized Wynette's raw talent and star potential. He took a chance on her, signing her to Epic Records, setting her on the path to stardom. However, a record deal didn't mean instant success. Her debut single, Apartment Number 9, received some attention, but it was far from a breakthrough hit. Financially, Wynette was still struggling, but she was closer than ever to the success she had dreamed of. Although Apartment Number 9 made a modest impact on the country charts, it wasn't an overnight sensation. However, it earned her credibility within the industry. Radio DJs and key players in country music began to take notice of her distinctive voice, recognizing its emotional depth and unique power. Though it wasn't a smash hit, the song opened doors for bigger opportunities. Still, being a female country singer in the 1960s came with challenges. Even with a charting single, Wynette found it difficult to secure live performances. Promoters were reluctant to book women, believing that male artists dominated the country music scene. Wynette later admitted that she quickly learned that country music was a man's world, and progress felt painfully slow despite her growing reputation. Amid her professional struggles, Wynette sought stability in her personal life. In 1967, she married Don Chappell, a songwriter and businessman who provided both emotional and professional support. The two teamed up for a road show, blending her rising music career with his industry connections. Though marrying Chappell seemed like a step toward stability, her biggest career breakthrough and her most turbulent relationship was just around the corner. As Tammy Wynette and Don Chappell toured together, her confidence as a performer grew, and she began to find her footing on stage. However, behind the scenes, tension simmered. Chappell, instead of celebrating his wife's rising success, seemed uneasy about her growing fame. His discomfort only intensified when a certain country music legend began appearing in their orbit, George Jones. Wynette quickly developed a deep bond with Jones, one of country music's most celebrated voices. They shared a mutual admiration for each other's talent, often discussing the possibility of recording duets. What began as a professional connection soon turned into something much deeper and far more complicated, as Wynette was still married to Chappell. Chappell sensed the shift and became increasingly jealous. As Wynette and Jones spent more time together, Chappell's resentment boiled over. One night at dinner, his frustration exploded. He lashed out at Wynette, demanding that she stop idolizing Jones and his music. It was a critical mistake. Before Wynette could respond, Jones reacted first. Outraged by Chappell's angry outburst, he flipped the dining table over, sending plates and silverware crashing to the floor. In that explosive moment, Wynette realized her marriage was beyond saving. Without hesitation, she gathered her daughters and left with Jones, making a clean break from Chappell and never looking back. Shortly after, Wynette and Chappell's marriage officially ended in divorce. The suddenness of the split stunned fans, but those who had witnessed their turbulent relationship knew the writing had been on the wall. Now, with George Jones by her side, Wynette embraced not just a new romance, but also the promise of an extraordinary musical partnership, one that would forever change the landscape of country music. Years later, in her autobiography, Wynette made a shocking allegation. She claimed that Don Chappell had once shared risque photos of her with his colleagues. The revelation outraged Chappell, who immediately filed a lawsuit against her for defamation. The legal battle only added to the bitterness between them, serving as one final ugly chapter in their already broken relationship. Despite the messy fallout with Chappell, Wynette quickly moved forward, both personally and professionally. In 1969, she married George Jones, and country music fans celebrated the union of two of the genre's most iconic voices. Together, they were hailed as Mr. and Mrs. Country Music, a power couple that embodied Nashville's golden era. But while they shined on stage, their private life was anything but perfect. Wynette and Jones began their life together in a grand fashion, purchasing a 6,000 square foot mansion in Florida. To the outside world, their life seemed like a dream. They had wealth, fame, and a musical partnership admired by millions. But behind the doors of their sprawling home, an unstoppable force threatened their happiness: Jones's drinking problem. It didn't take long before Wynette realized just how severe his alcohol addiction was. Jones would disappear for days at a time, indulging in heavy drinking binges that strained both their marriage and professional careers. The dream life she had envisioned was quickly unraveling, turning into a heartbreaking cycle of love, turmoil, and disappointment. Desperate to keep him from drinking, Wynette resorted to hiding his car keys, hoping to prevent him from driving to the liquor store. But in one infamous incident, her plan backfired spectacularly. Instead of giving up, Jones simply grabbed the keys to their riding lawnmower and drove it down the road to buy more alcohol. It was one of many moments that showed just how powerless Wynette felt in the face of Jones's addiction. As their once magical love story continued to unravel, Jones's now infamous lawnmower ride to buy alcohol became a legendary tale in country music history, a symbol of just how unmanageable his drinking had become. By the early 1970s, Wynette had exhausted every effort to control his addiction, but nothing worked. The man she had once adored was slipping further into self-destruction, and the strain of their marriage was becoming unbearable. Their once glamorous life together had descended into chaos. Jones would disappear for days at a time, indulging in alcohol-fueled binges, leaving Wynette to search for him, only to find him passed out in random places. On more than one occasion, his drinking led him to padded cells in detox wards, where he was forced to sober up under medical supervision. But each relapse chipped away at Wynette's patience, and she began to wonder how much longer she could endure it. In her memoir, Wynette made a shocking claim. She alleged that during one of Jones's drunken episodes, he chased her with a loaded rifle. This incident, if true, was the final breaking point, the moment when love was no longer enough to justify staying. Though Jones denied the story, it only fueled public fascination with their tumultuous relationship and cemented its reputation as one of country music's most dramatic love stories. By 1974, Wynette had reached her limit. After one too many disappearances, she filed for divorce, citing Jones's substance abuse and erratic behavior. The once celebrated country couple of the century had fallen apart, their marriage collapsing in less than 6 years. Yet, despite their painful separation, their musical partnership endured. Even after finalizing their divorce in 1975, Wynette and Jones continued to record duets and perform together. The raw tension between them only added a new layer of intensity to their performances, and fans couldn't get enough. But behind the on-stage chemistry, there was still a lingering pain that neither could fully escape. Even before her divorce from George Jones, Tammy Wynette endured a serious medical ordeal. In 1970, she underwent a hysterectomy, a procedure that resulted in severe complications. The surgery left her vulnerable to chronic infections and painful scar tissue adhesions, health issues that would haunt her for the rest of her life. Her medical struggles only worsened in the following years. She battled relentless infections, adhesions, and gallbladder problems, often forcing her to cancel performances. Yet despite her debilitating pain, Wynette continued to push through, returning to the stage out of financial necessity. Her health issues were becoming overwhelming, but an even deeper struggle was beginning to take root. To manage the pain from her surgeries, doctors prescribed her powerful narcotics, starting with Demerol. Initially, these medications provided relief, but over time, she began relying on them not just for pain management, but also for emotional and on-stage stability. Painkillers became a crutch, something she needed to function in both her personal and professional life. As her dependence on painkillers grew, Wynette developed a troubling pattern. She visited multiple doctors, obtaining overlapping prescriptions to ensure she never ran out of medication. While on tour, she often made late-night detours to emergency rooms, seeking refills or injections. Despite the escalating addiction, her career showed no signs of slowing down, at least in the public eye. Wynette later claimed to have undergone more than 30 surgeries over the years. Some were necessary procedures to repair adhesions, while others were questionable or excessive. Regardless of their medical necessity, each operation further cemented her reliance on painkillers, trapping her in a vicious cycle of addiction and medical dependency. Hoping for a fresh start, Tammy Wynette rushed into marriage with real estate developer Michael Tomlin in 1976, despite having only known him for a few weeks. Many saw it as an impulsive rebound, a desperate attempt to find stability after years of turmoil and heartbreak. But it wasn't long before serious concerns arose about Tomlin's past, and the marriage quickly fell apart. Their union lasted just 6 weeks before Wynette had it annulled. Tomlin's lavish lifestyle was a facade. His office furniture was rented, and he appeared to be leading a double life. Once she realized the truth, Wynette ended things immediately, leaving her even more disillusioned about love. Not long after, Wynette found herself entangled in a brief romance with actor Burt Reynolds. Their relationship became public in 1977, but it was short-lived and ended on a disturbing note. One night, Wynette discovered Reynolds unconscious in her bathtub, nearly drowning due to a severe drop in blood sugar. She saved his life, but the terrifying incident made her reassess their relationship. The close call with Reynolds forced Wynette to confront just how chaotic her personal life had become. While the tabloids speculated about their breakup, she knew that Reynolds wasn't ready for the kind of stability she needed. In the end, she walked away, realizing that her search for love was far from over. Then, in 1978, she married songwriter and producer George Ritchie, the man who would become her last husband. Ritchie also took over as her manager, and to the public, it appeared as though Wynette had finally found peace. But behind closed doors, those closest to her weren't convinced. Many suspected that her struggles were far from over, and that this new chapter would bring its own set of challenges. Once George Ritchie became both Tammy Wynette's husband and manager, he quickly asserted control over nearly every aspect of her life. Believing that their marriage required a more structured environment, he fired many of the women from her road crew, claiming that living in a female dormitory was not conducive to their relationship. He then took charge of her finances, dictated her schedule, and reshaped her professional circle, decisions that alienated many longtime members of her team. Wynette's daughters were deeply unsettled by Ritchie's influence. They accused him of isolating their mother, claiming that he kept her away from friends and family. Georgette, her daughter with George Jones, believed that Ritchie deliberately blocked communication between Wynette and her ex-husband, ensuring that the two would not reconnect. Despite the growing family tensions, Wynette stood by Ritchie, publicly defending him as a devoted and supportive partner. Then in 1978, a shocking event sent waves through the country music world. Wynette reported that she had been kidnapped from a Nashville shopping mall, beaten, and left abandoned on a roadside outside the city. She later appeared with visible injuries, including bruises and a broken cheekbone. The story made national headlines, leaving fans and media stunned and horrified. Despite an extensive investigation, authorities never identified a suspect or made any arrests. Years later, Wynette's daughter Jackie voiced her own suspicions. She believed that her mother's injuries had not come from an unknown attacker, but from domestic abuse at the hands of Ritchie. Jackie theorized that Wynette had fabricated the kidnapping story to hide the truth. However, the real circumstances surrounding the incident were never conclusively proven, leaving it as one of the enduring mysteries of Wynette's troubled life. Stepping back in time, one of Wynette's greatest musical triumphs came in 1968, when she and producer Billy Sherrill wrote Stand By Your Man in less than 15 minutes. Though the song initially sparked controversy for its message, it became her signature hit, propelling her to superstardom. Over the years, it was hailed as one of the most iconic country music songs ever recorded, ensuring that no matter how tumultuous her personal life became, her legacy in music remained undeniable. When Wynette first recorded Stand By Your Man, she was unsure about the song's vocal demands. The high notes felt too challenging, and she worried that the key was set too high for her range. But producer Billy Sherrill insisted she push through, believing the soaring vocal moments would give the song its emotional intensity. He was right. That powerful high note became one of the song's defining elements, though Wynette was never entirely comfortable singing it live. At the peak of the feminist movement, the song sparked controversy, with critics claiming it encouraged female subservience. Wynette, however, defended Stand By Your Man as nothing more than a heartfelt love ballad, insisting it was never intended as a political statement. The debate only amplified the song's visibility, drawing more attention to Wynette and solidifying her career as a country music icon. Years later, her ongoing health struggles reached a terrifying climax. In late 1993, Wynette's deteriorating condition led to a medical crisis, and she slipped into a coma. As she hovered between life and death, she was rushed to the hospital, leaving those closest to her fearful that the end was near. Even George Jones, long estranged from her, arrived at her bedside, terrified this might be his final goodbye. Miraculously, Wynette pulled through and, despite her fragile health, resumed her career. Jones's emotional visit reopened the door to their friendship, and the two decided to reunite musically. Their collaboration led to a new album, thrilling country music fans who still cherished their classic duets. On April 6, 1998, Wynette passed away at home, sitting on her couch at just 55 years old. Initial reports cited a blood clot in her lung. Tammy Wynette's life was filled with triumphs and tragedies, but her influence on country music remains undeniable. She paved the way for future generations of female artists, proving that vulnerability and strength could coexist in song. Though her life was cut short, her music lives on, touching the hearts of fans, old and new. What are your favorite Tammy Wynette songs or memories? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoy deep dives into the lives of music legends, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out more stories of the stars who shaped history.